And welcome everyone. My name is Amos Joseph, joined by my co-host Brook Potter, and this is the 10K Rum Podcast. How's it going, Brook?
It's going good, Amos. We're enjoying semi-summer out here in the UK, which basically means it's pouring with rain, which is the best you could hope for England. But it's going well. It's going well. Good to be back on the show. This is number 56.
56, yes.
You do realize that we have gone longer than most podcasts ever do, right? Like the cutoff is 7 episodes and most podcasts die. So we're doing pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, there's some shows that you and I listen to that we're starting to approach their numbers too. Whenever they take a week off, we catch up a little bit. So
we'll get them.
Exactly. But today, Brook, we're actually having a guest on. We've been pretty much having a whole series of guests. I know we had Darko, the Forex trader, last week, and then we had Caitlin Cloven the week before that, and then today we have Steffi Cole, who is a Twitter person. At least that's how I found out about her.
Hello.
Hi. So, Steffi, now. I've pretty much just found you on Twitter, saw you interacting with a lot of the same people I interact with. Tell us a little bit about yourself, like what's your involvement with being a libertarian, pretty much all of that. Just introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah, my liberty journey, it started back in about 2009. So, I mean, before that, I voted for Obama in 2008.
Oh, blasphemy.
Yeah. Do you want the long story now, or do you just want the summary version?
We'll get into it, but introduce yourself to the folks. Yes.
Okay. So basically, I got increasingly involved when I found Ron Paul in 2012, and then I found Austin Peterson around 2016. Got super involved in his campaign, super involved on social media. That's where I got my love for Twitter. I never used Twitter so much before in my life, and now it's my very favorite platform. And so now I'm a liberty promoter. That's the term I've given myself. I love promoting ideas, people, products, anything liberty, I'll talk about it.
And I mean, so let's talk a little bit about, well, first of all, do you mind saying the state that you're in? I don't know.
Yes, I'm in Michigan.
You're in Michigan. And so obviously there's a progression. Were you raised in a libertarian family? Does your gun-toting dad have like a small army stockpile or something like that?
Oh, no, it was very much not that. Guns were not used in my household. I had not gone shooting until I was in college. So no, I was not raised in a libertarian household at all. I do remember having a conversation with my dad once about the death penalty when Timothy McVeigh was put to death. And I was super upset about it at the time. And I was in 7th grade. So I don't know where I got those values from.
Interesting. So how would you have described yourself? Like when you got into politics, you obviously didn't start where you're at now. Tell us a little bit about where you started.
So where I started, I basically didn't know anything. My boyfriend went to a business university. So he would teach me everything he was learning. He was in a lot of economics classes, and he would go over like the housing bubble and, draw diagrams for me. And I would debate with him back and forth and be like, I don't understand. This is so confusing. But then finally it just started clicking, and we would watch a lot of conspiracy theory videos. I mean, Alex Jones, Jesse Ventura, those were people that got me involved and informed. I mean, maybe what they were saying wasn't always true, but it still wakes you up a bit. It makes you think.
Were you concerned about the frogs turning gay?
No, not that. but the fluoride in the water is something that
I would agree with you on that.
Find some truth in. Yeah.
Yeah. Too much fluoride, definitely.
Yeah, I drink spring water.
Definitely. Now, so then after you kind of watched their stuff, you said you were catching on like Ron Paul, then Austin Peterson. How did you get, I guess, drawn to someone like Austin Peterson? I know a lot of libertarians have identified with him now. He's kind of like this, I guess, one of the many figures now. He's part of that. How did you get involved with him?
Yeah, I mean, he's that young wave of liberty. So I first saw him on the Libertarian Party presidential debates hosted by John Stossel. And at the time, I was a Gary Johnson supporter. I didn't really know about the other candidates on the stage. And I remember hearing Austin Peterson speak, and I was like, wow, he's super young. he really makes a lot of sense. He was pro-life. So my values really aligned with his. And so I would just, watch his YouTube videos, listen to his podcast. And then I actually ended up seeing him at Hillsdale College speak, which is in Michigan. It's a private college. And from there, I joined his ninja community. I became a freedom ninja. It was like a private group at the time. And that's where I connected with a lot of people. I got invited to join the Libertarian Party, which is why I joined in 2017 until 2018. So it just opened up a lot of doors for me. And I think just Austin Peterson has a way of bringing people in, and they're kind people. That's the thing. They're very nice and supportive to each other.
Definitely does not sound like. I mean, we'll get into that a little bit with the Libertarian Party. I know there's a lot of mixed feedback from people that I know that have been involved with it. Now, so you got involved with his campaign, and then I just on your profile on your Twitter and such, you have a picture where you're also you're holding up a Justin Amash banner as well. Now, were you involved in the campaign at all, or was it just like it's just that one picture that's out there, or?
Yeah, it was literally one day. So one day in early fall, after Austin Peterson's campaign was over, I finally had all this time on my hands. I mean, I literally put my life and soul into the Austin Peterson campaign during that year. So it was a whole year from like August to August that was all I did. So after that, I was just kind of trying to find myself, and I was like, where should I go from here? And Justin Amash has always been someone I've looked up to. I actually saw him at a Ron Paul rally at Central Michigan University back in 2012. So that's when I first got involved with Amash. But no, I wasn't like phone banking or actively door knocking for him. I live 2 hours away from Grand Rapids, which is where Justin Amash is stationed. So I'd like to go out there more often. I'd definitely be more willing this time around when he campaigns again. But yeah, I was in 2 parades on that day. So I basically walked in the parades and I handed out candy, and it was really fun.
I think I caught one of your YouTube videos. So when Amos told me that you're going to be a guest, I was all like, who is this? I don't know. Right. So I think I connected with you on Twitter and I checked out your YouTube. And I think you were driving back from the campaign when you did a video about him.
Yeah.
You were very passionate about that. I want to go a little bit back though. When you said you had this boyfriend and he's, teaching you this economics. Was there a moment where it just kind of clicked? Like you just realized like, this worldview of liberty is the way it should be. Like this is the ideology I'm going to hold on. Was there a moment like that?
I was so unsure for so long. And I think truly in my heart, I loved liberty, but I was afraid to show it. So my boyfriend would kind of help drag me out of my shell. We went to like a Tea Party rally in 2010. And, we didn't like tell our family and friends really. We didn't publicize it. Because it was very taboo at the time. I was like an underground liberty lover. So I didn't truly show my liberty colors until the Ron Paul era, I would say. I mean, I have never felt so much energy that I felt at the Ron Paul rallies. It was just amazing. So I would say probably around 2011, 2012 is when I truly just let it go.
Fantastic.
So what was your experience then, you said, between 2017 and 2018 with being part of the Libertarian Party? Were you going to the conventions, or were you involved in a lot of, I don't know how each state does it. I know here in Minnesota, they've done like either county meetings or they'll do like congressional districts. What all were you doing for that whole year?
Yeah, so first, I was invited by my Freedom Ninjas, so I went to the meetings once a month in my local county, and basically they kind of coerced me into being the development director because no one else wanted to be. So in April of 2017, it came time to vote for all the roles that everyone would have, and they were like, "Hey, you should be the development director," and I didn't want to say no because I hate saying no to things. I like being nice, so I'm like, okay. And so I just redecorated their fundraising, collection box. And I made a little t-shirt store, and we sold like Libertarian Party t-shirts to try to fundraise. And so, yeah, so I was very dedicated. I mean, I went to, every meeting they had, and I tried hard. And then I did go to a state convention that they had. But then as I became more involved in the Austin Peterson campaign, Austin was running as a Republican. So that was sort of taboo in the Libertarian community. And so I did get some backlash from members of the Libertarian Party. I had someone make fun of me that I made a Austin Peterson pumpkin for Halloween. They posted my picture and they were, basically bashing me. So there was some bullying going on, and that's just not what I'm about. I don't need that energy.
On the subject of bullying, though, was your family supportive of all of this, of your involvement, and did you have those awkward conversations at dinner time where you started like preaching about the Second Amendment kind of thing?
Well, I'd say the awkward conversation started in 2012, and that was when I lost a lot more of my friends. So back then, I was more of a debater, and I would yell at people, and I was just so passionate. But that wasn't the right way of going about things. So now I have a different approach. I'm just more kind, and I just walk the walk. And when people see how passionate and happy I am, they're happy for me. So yeah, I mean, my mom, she's a huge cheerleader in my life. My boyfriend, obviously, he's so supportive. So, and even my coworkers and friends, they're just so excited to hear all the different things that I'm getting involved in. And it's really a breath of fresh air because I really like the support.
Now, I know you mentioned a couple of things with the Libertarian Party. Were there, I guess, so because I know there's one topic we were touching on, and I think it's probably safe that we could start touching on it a little bit. With the ideas of liberty that you've like been exposed to, how has it challenged some of your beliefs? Like, has it changed them in a lot of ways? I know you said you voted for Obama, and being in the left and such, there's definitely differences with like Second Amendment rights and such. Like, where do you see yourself with like how that's changed your views? Has it changed them a lot, or because I know you said you kind of always have had liberty at heart. What kind of views do you think have like changed over the time?
Well, I always try to bring myself back to, that 2008, 2009 timeframe. I went to social work school. So social workers by default are usually for social welfare programs, and helping the poor, very community oriented. So I'm still very much all about that. It's just how we go about getting those resources to, the impoverished communities is how I've changed. So before I was probably more into, let's help the poor, let's give them free stuff. But now I'm into empowering people to help themselves. And so I would say, so that was one change. And then abortion, I don't really know where that changed for me. I think it was somewhere in like 2015, 2016. But I used to be pro-choice because when I was a lot younger, I mean, I thought of if I got pregnant, like that would just mess up my life. I would not want that to happen. So, of course I was like gung-ho abortion. Like I totally got why people would do it. But now as I've gotten older, and I've learned more about, how to respect life and just nature. I love gardening and just being in that really helps me think about the world in a different way. So I've become pro-life now after that journey.
Were you always pro Second Amendment?
I was more scared of guns. I just didn't want to touch them. They were not in my household. I didn't know how to use them. I was obviously more curious in college, as I had friends that would go shooting. So I wanted to learn more, but I was still very, very cautious.
And you did fire an AR-15, if I recall the video.
Yeah, I've fired one 2 times, once in Missouri and once here.
but you did it on a gun range, though, right?
Yeah. In Missouri, it was on someone's property, but here it was on a range.
Now, do you own any guns at this moment?
I'm not going to share that information.
I was going to say.
I was about to say.
That's going to be a surprise for whoever's unfortunate enough to break in.
Even if I did, they all got lost in a boating accident today. So it was just a really bad accident.
Bad timing. No,
that's actually probably a better answer than if you said yes.
I mean, is it easy to get guns? Oh, it's Michigan, right? Is it a very pro-gun?
Yeah, I would say so. We have concealed carry, so you obviously would have to have a permit if you want to carry a pistol, concealed on your person. But yeah, if you go to the range, I mean, as long as you have your guns, in a case contained, like in the back seat or the trunk, you're good. I don't know all of the nitty gritty rules. It gets complicated. But
you don't even want to know the rules in the UK because we don't have we're not allowed to defend ourselves. Period. Like. Straight up self-defense is illegal in the UK. So
you can't have a gun at all?
No, you can't even have a baseball bat with the intent to protect yourself. If you say like you keep a bat or something and they're like, why do you have this? And you say to protect yourself, they will arrest you because that's intent to assault.
And that's actually happened recently. There was a case with a guy who had a bat and defended himself. And it brought in this whole conversation of basically they set a precedent to say, well, if you have anything with the intention of using to protect yourself, that's not allowed.
Yeah, it's intent to
you
assault.
You would literally have to say this baseball bat is for sporting use only.
Yeah, It just happened to connect with his head by accident.
Right.
Right.
Can you buy mace?
No, mace is illegal. You can get an alarm, one of those loud squeaker things. I would say the only place you can actually buy a firearm is Northern Ireland because of a lot of the unrest and stuff like that, which is ideally why I'd probably like to move out there. Yeah. But it's a disaster out here and it's getting worse.
Wow. And you can't have knives anymore, right? There's something
No, they're even like butter knives. We have campaigns out here where the police are asking people to turn in butter knives and spoons.
So how do you butter your roll?
I mean, yeah, no, that's literally the joke, right? So we have, for me personally, I have my local police council, and they always show, we've collected these knives, and it's like scissors and spoons, and they say, these dangerous weapons have been taken off the street, and everybody's like, well, how am I going to butter my toast now?
Right?
You've taken all of our utensils.
Oh my gosh. So how would the police say that you should protect yourself? Do they give education at all? Okay.
I mean, briefly, you have to respond in kind. So if somebody comes in unarmed and you grab a knife, that's excessive force.
Right.
Right. So you have to be unarmed and you have to respond with like, but ultimately it comes down to you have to call the police. An elderly gentleman out here recently, war veteran, somebody broke into his house. And he defended it. He was a boxer and he knocked the guy out, right? Yeah. He could defend himself. Arrested for assault. It was absolute madness.
And the person who broke in was not in trouble at all.
Well, I think they got their trespassing charge, but it's a lot less than the assault.
Okay. So I guess we should ban fists then. We should ban.
That's coming. Yeah. That's coming. Isn't that in China?
We should just cut off. We should just cut off our arms, all of our limbs.
Exactly.
Are you armed? Yeah, I've got two.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's crazy over there, and that's why on Brooke and I we have a lot of these conversations where we're able to kind of compare and contrast. Like liberty is still very much alive in the U.S. and it's still, I mean, we still have a Libertarian Party that or just Libertarians in general that shed light on the fact that we're not as free as we might think. Now, abortion. I guess with the thing on abortion, and it's definitely going to be a spicy topic. What I guess you said, with becoming more liberty minded, it's kind of changed your view, and getting older, it's changed your view on life. What specifically were there moments, conversations you had with someone, maybe a video you saw somewhere, or a certain candidate that made a really compelling argument for a more pro-life argument? Because I know libertarians are pretty much split almost 50-50 on the issue.
Yeah, like I said, I don't really know the exact point where I transitioned. So it was just kind of a journey. This whole thing has just been a mind journey. So I know, I always talk to my boyfriend about my views, and we just kind of talk about them in circles. And I I've talked to my dad, actually. He's become more libertarian over the years. So I've talked to him about being pro-life. He's a Trump supporter, my dad is. He was also a Ron Paul supporter. But Ron Paul is pro-life. And so that's kind of where I first heard about a pro-life libertarian. And then Austin Peterson, obviously, is pro-life. So, you know, the fine lines are what I kind of struggle with. Like, obviously, I would agree with abortion if it were, you know, going to harm the mother's life. So if it were a medical issue where the mom could die, I can see where that might be a medically necessary thing to do.
Right.
You know, rape, incest. No, every life is valuable. So just because the mother conceived, you know, through rape, I mean, that's not the baby's fault.
Right. Kind of what is it? Ben Shapiro would say, you know, basically taking a horrible thing and doing an even more horrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how, as a libertarian, I know it gets tricky is now, where does that line up with, as a libertarian who's pro-life, how do you go about the political aspect of it? How would you, I mean, is it legislation? Is it just, or do you kind of believe your cause should be spread through just education? Because that's where it gets tricky, is you have the libertarians that are, and I've heard it put this way, there's being morally one way while being politically another way. Like, there's libertarians that are basically morally, like personally, they would choose a pro-life just for themselves. If they got someone pregnant or got pregnant, they would go the pro-life route. But then as a legislative political issue, they would be pro-choice because they don't want to tell other people what to do, the whole body autonomy argument.
Mm-hmm.
How would you go about that? Personally?
Yeah. And do
you have that split, or are you both politically and morally pro-life?
Well, I think in order to make this pro-life transition, we do need to go about it in a certain way. So I was reading Liberty Defined by Ron Paul, and he actually said the Constitution, didn't talk about abortion at all. And so the federal government really cannot legislate on abortion. So it should be left up to the states. And so you do see, a lot of libertarian-minded pro-life people saying, leave it up to the states. The states can decide on their own legislation. So I agree with that, which I think most everything should be left up to the states anyway. But then I personally like to just walk the walk, lead by example. I think that is the best way. Don't try to shove something down someone's throat, because that's not going to help. So in order to make this moral transition, we just need to start educating. Yes, educating. That is key. Like when I watched the Unplanned movie recently that came out, that was super educational. Yes, it was a movie. I'm sure it had, some things in it that weren't completely true. It was more Hollywood, but it showed, a fetus getting sucked out of a mom and all the bloody gore, and then they talked about how late-term abortions, they actually euthanize the baby, and then they deliver the baby over the course of a few days. It was very disturbing. So I think if people truly knew what really goes on, then they might start to think about it more and change naturally.
Okay. I mean, you're definitely hitting, this is the smoking argument, right? Mm-hmm. In some ways, like, how do you reduce smoking? And they've had a number of campaigns to reduce smoking. And the only thing that has actually worked is exactly what you said, is education. Mm-hmm. Educating people on the dangers and on all these other things. Amos and I have gone back and forth on the abortion issue because I come from a country where abortion is illegal. Originally, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, wow.
And legitimately, doctors could be arrested and all these different types of things. Mm-hmm. And we have entire wings of our hospitals that are dedicated to botched abortions. Where the women have gone and, they've done all sorts of crazy things. And many times it results in both the death of the mother and the child.
Oh, my God.
So like you, I would say I'm pro-life personally, but I've seen the horrors when it's not necessarily, legal and rare, which would be the ideal. Mm-hmm. So that's why we make that distinction, the political side of it. Yeah, we really should leave it up to people, the community, to educate young women about their choices and their options, try to keep the state out of it as best as possible. But there are times maybe it's necessary. We shouldn't get in the way of that either.
Yeah, I mean, I know even if there's a law for something, people are still going to do it. No matter what you do, people are still going to murder.
Right.
They're still going to use drugs. If there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly.
Yeah, and just and that's the same thing with the whole gun control thing. So you try to argue this with now the left and the right, and you kind of say, well, you use this argument here, but you won't apply it here, and you look at the left and you use an argument here, but you won't apply it here. It is tricky, and it's interesting how even like among libertarians, it's pretty much split. You have where it's tricky too, because I know we've had some an anarchist on our show a while back, and we talked about kind of like what is the one thing like in your you have your libertarian paradise, you have this place where government is almost non-existent, but what do you still have as the one thing that kind of poses? Some libertarians will say it's whether it's like abortion, others will say it's maybe something like certain types of rights that like where they don't feel maybe too much freedom is still a problem. Do you have anything besides abortion that you still see as maybe like you still feel maybe government should be involved in? Or
yeah, I mean, just protecting vulnerable individuals in general. Children, if children are being abused, animals, I'm a vegetarian, so I definitely struggle with this, but animals, it's like, should animals be abused? Should people get in trouble for harming them? It's like, yeah, I think there should be, some repercussions if you harm these individuals or harm anybody for that matter.
I mean, wouldn't that just fall under just the basic principle of just doing no harm to others, the not aggression principle?
Does that apply to animals though? It's kind of
right. That's been a big debate.
And then the debate also, and that's where the debate even ties into abortion, is is there aggression against how people define as the fetus or a child too? Are there any other things, I guess, that you've thought about, like where maybe government would, at least some form of something I know it's tricky because if the government, people instantly say no, but then it's like, should the community...
You're asking if she's an anarchist or...
Right.
There is that. Yeah.
I would say I'm a minarchist.
Right.
I would rather just go back to a long time ago when the community just kind of decided, like, if somebody killed somebody else, let the community, deal with it. Let them punish the person themselves, how they see fit. We can take care of these things.
Back when duels were legal, right?
Right. So a lot of things that we depend on the government to do, the community can do it just as well, if not better.
Right. It's ironic that we've lost that community feel, especially in this day and age, which is ironic because we have more communication than ever. We're connecting with people all over the world and stuff like that, but yet we've lost that neighborhood community, which is it's insane.
Yeah, I think about that all the time, and I think about why did we lose that, and I wonder if part of it is because of religion. Back in the day, people used to come together at church or at whatever religious facility they use. But now, obviously more people are atheists or, they just don't really practice. So they don't come around for family holidays anymore.
Right.
And then our morals have kind of gone downhill, and part of it may be because of the lack of religion. I don't know. I'm not a super religious person myself, but I still really like to have morals.
Did you have any kind of faith upbringing, just kind of briefly?
Yeah, I was raised Jewish. So,
wonderful.
Yeah. But I'm not super religious. I went to temple growing up, for the main holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, celebrated Hanukkah. But in my day-to-day life, I'm just more of a spiritual person. So I don't really practice one religion per se. I'm culturally Jewish.
Brilliant.
So you must really like Ben Shapiro then. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean it's refreshing to see Jewish libertarians because you don't. Well, he's a conservative, but you don't see very many Jewish libertarians at all. You mostly see Jewish Democrats.
Yeah.
Must be a lot of fun at family gatherings then.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather actually, I think he likes Trump. I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
So you never know within your own family. You never know how things pan out. But yeah, most of my family is Democrats, I would say.
That's awesome.
So how was it received? I know you said your mother is like a cheerleader, but you said your father is a Trump supporter as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
to like extended family and such, how was the coming out? I guess as a libertarian, is it typically well received? Do you have any conversations about politics, or does that kind of just you don't talk about that at family gatherings?
Yeah.
I would say guns are still taboo to talk about. You know,
Yep.
I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Jewish mothers, but Jewish mothers are extremely protective. Yes. You know, they don't want their kids to come in harm's way. So when they hear, that you're going to a shooting range, they're like, oh no, don't do that. Call me when you get there. Call me when you leave. Make sure you're okay. So that's kind of how they do things. So yeah, you have to.
How did they respond to your video of you shooting the AR-15?
My mom just doesn't really like to watch things all the time. She's like, oh, that's great, but I don't need to see it right now.
She doesn't need to get a heart attack watching her daughter shooting away.
Exactly. She just doesn't think it's very tasteful.
Mm.
But she still respects me nonetheless, and she supports me.
That's awesome.
Now, boy, we actually went through a lot of the topics we were going to talk about anyways. Now, what was, I know you said part of the I know we're going to go back a little bit with the Libertarian Party and your involvement. You said a lot of people kind of bashed because you were supporting Austin Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of I guess, just as an overview, the good, the bad, and anything in between that you saw with the Libertarian Party? Are there things you see that are really good that you like, and some things that you could see that can improve? And I'm not going to make you badmouth Libertarian Party. I think there's plenty of that happens as is. But what are some things you like, the overview of it?
Yeah. The thing about me is I'm very blunt. I'm bluntly honest, so I'll say what I think. And it comes from the heart. I don't mean bad by anything. So the good, I felt so welcomed. There aren't very many females in the Libertarian Party, at least in my area. So there was regularly like one other woman at my county meetings. But I was so happy and surprised that they treated me with a lot of respect. So there were a lot of older men in the group, and they didn't like try to flirt with me or just be weird. It was very normal. They treated me like one of them. So I was pleasantly surprised. And it was very much community oriented. They were, really supportive. We'd have dinner together at our meetings each month. So I really liked that. And you felt engaged. You felt like you were doing something, like they would have events. You could get people to, sign for people's campaigns, to do the sign up list. So you felt like you were part of something. But then as I, kind of dive deeper and deeper, you saw the people that were running for office. And so they would come to the county meetings and they would talk. And I just felt like a lot of the people really had no chance. So to me, I was like, at times, I'm like, what's the point? I know we just want to get the message out there, but I know most of these people are never going to win. And so I didn't know if I wanted to put all of my time and energy into something that really wouldn't get anywhere ultimately. Although it is getting somewhere, just not to the end goal of the campaign.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I know that's definitely tricky.
Yeah, so that's when I was just kind of like, I didn't really feel like getting involved in a lot of these campaigns. I didn't feel motivated just because I knew how they were going to end up. I wanted to invest my time into something where I thought it would go somewhere. So Austin Peterson's campaign, obviously, I felt that was a huge campaign. No, he didn't win, You know, he didn't get even 2 digits, you know, in percentage of votes. But it just felt bigger, and it felt like we were making more of an impact by doing that campaign.
Right.
And so, and in the Libertarian Party, there are a lot of anarchists. So a lot of the anarchists come to the party meetings. I mean, I don't know if they have their own meetings, I believe, outside of the Libertarian Party too. So I don't know why they feel the need to come into the Libertarian world also, but we do kind of mix, you know, like I'm a minarchist, I would say, in terms of my thoughts. So the anarchists, they were the ones that were more bullies.
Really?
Yeah. That was the person who was bullying me online. Yeah.
Huh.
An ANCAP?
Uh-huh.
Wow. Surprising.
Yeah, so they were the ones that just didn't go about things in the best way. They would kind of cut people down, have a lot of debates, ostracize people. So that's kind of what would drive away a lot of people.
I'm guessing they were not the ones that were actively involved in any political campaigns or just doing anything per se, were they?
Some of them were running for campaigns, yeah, as libertarians.
Because I know, at least my perception of ANCAPs tend to be just a lot of they don't want government, so they kind of I don't know if you know you're familiar with the term the Rothbard button. They just want to push that. And
oh no, I'm not familiar with that. What is that?
Oh, you're not.
Murray Rothbard, the anarchist.
I still have to read his book. I'm getting through all of the authors, and Rothbard is next.
Yes.
Among libertarians, the term the Rothbard button is basically like if you could push a button and government would just disappear. Like basically, I push the button, anarchy is here. And people kind of debate. A lot of libertarians will talk about like if I push the Rothbard button, what's going to happen? Well, a lot of anarchists and ANCAPs want to push the Rothbard button. Basically, they're not looking for the gradual, like just with the system we have, the gridlock, as a lot of people call it, is we need small gradual changes. We have to dismantle government little by little.
Yes.
The Rothbard button is like just a thought experiment of what happens if it's all gone today. And you have these anarchists out there that are saying, following the nap, and they want to do all this, and they want, everything would just be great. But then they say, well, we want to push the Rothbard button. Well, realistically speaking, a lot of people will die. If government disappeared tomorrow or today, whatever, like just right away, a lot of people are going to get hurt, and unfortunately, a lot of people would also die because anarchy, as it is, we can't handle it. Just we're so used to, a lot of people are so used to it. Mainly you're probably going to have a lot of libertarians and conservatives that will have all the guns and have to fend for themselves, and unfortunately, a lot of people die, and that's not the best way. But a lot of them are just kind of like, I want everything privatized today and government be gone like now, and it's like it's not really practical. So then they kind of adopt this very narrow-minded perspective of even just like they don't want to vote, they don't want to be involved in any political action,
right?
And they just spout off, privatize everything till they're blue in the face without really understanding that the only way you're going to have the real change is unfortunately having to vote. In the system that
be involved,
actually get people in that are willing to make those decisions to slowly dismantle something. Just,
right. As I see abortion, how we can evolve, take baby steps. We just cannot jump to the end. Just take it in small doses, and people will eventually start changing. We have to undo what we did over the course of all of these years.
And it's going to take probably just as long as a time, people, a lot of minarchists I've talked to will say they want to kind of go back to pretty close to 1776, kind of like that. Just, we don't have all these laws and all these regulations and all these organizations now run by the government that are basically so pretty much integral to our lives now. And it's probably going to take just as long. And a lot of anarchists don't like that.
They're impatient.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's true, because Utah, didn't they just like wipe the regulation slate clean, and they started to re-implement like just what they thought was essential. Wasn't there like
Really?
yeah, there was this because the last guest we had, Caitlin, we talked about that I think it was Utah. I might have overstepped on that. But they basically said, look, there is just too much on the books. They wiped it clean and they said we're going to start over and only implement what we think is like
But I mean,
really necessary.
With regulations, though, that's just regulation.
Yeah, so I mean, but still a huge step.
Right. Maybe just large enough of a step that people can handle it.
Yeah. But and in the economy, I suppose it's a lot easier because, it's business relationships, but it does happen.
And as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about like Ron Paul, for example. It's like you can't just remove all of the social welfare programs, boom, in one day. This has to be a gradual shift, or else, yes, people are going to die. People are going to be crying in the streets with no food. So you just have to slowly wean them off like a baby from its mother, show them how to be independent, motivate them, empower them. And that's going to take a lot of time too.
I mean, a lot of the institutions we used to have, like Amos actually just wrote a fantastic article for Think Liberty and Being a Libertarian about the mutual aid societies and the friendly societies that we used to have. Now, most people just believe, oh, we've always had welfare. We've always had, some kind of government assistance. But that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
We had these mutual aid societies and lodges and fraternities. Sometimes they were based on religion or ethnicity. So they might have, the African, whatever, the Caribbean, the Jewish and whatever. And it served as your community. Everybody met there. They'd have events. Everybody contributed a membership fee. And that was your insurance. If you died, the community would pay for your funeral and do different things. If you had medical expenses, if you needed a job, even if you needed a loan to start a business, that whole thing. And it was state regulation that killed it because it was competing with the welfare state and they literally wiped it out. So, I mean, Amos wrote it, so he can say more.
I mean, you had, he's touched on a lot of it. You had your fraternity, sisterhoods, brotherhoods. Those were in like the 1850s and coming into the 1900s. And once the Depression hit, the government stepped in and said, well, I mean, it almost seemed inevitable, but with the Depression hitting so hard and the government didn't know what to do, they implemented the beginnings of our welfare state. And a lot of the laws and regulations sort of pushed out these fraternities, and most of these dissolved or were absorbed into other groups, which then eventually turned into modern day insurance companies. A lot of insurance companies have their roots that tie back to this. And something ties back to a brotherhood or a sisterhood or something. They had like these knights and something. There was like 5 major ones, but each town or state had like a small group. And they taught them life skills, because back then you actually had to like have a lot of skills to like live on your own. Nowadays we don't really have as much. I mean,
we're spoiled.
We're spoiled, really, and which brought. I think I actually had a conversation with someone, and it brings like to a lot of other questions. Is people kind of wonder like, oh, like. Libertarianism is looking at like human nature and how, some libertarians will kind of see humans as like more like we're inherently good or we're capable of being empathetic. And they see like nowadays we're just not capable. But if you look back far enough, whole communities were empathetic to each other. You had, so we've just sort of strayed away, in my opinion. It's not that we're just not capable, like we're all just inherently bad people. We've just strayed away because in the past, we didn't have government for welfare. We had the church, we had fraternities, we had people had very well developed, just their own social networks of friends and family. So.
And then also voluntarism. I mean, that's something that I've done my whole life, actually, even before I was a libertarian. So like even in middle school, I remember I volunteered for an animal shelter and like I volunteered for a camp and tons of animal farms. I'm huge in the animal community. And I volunteered for hospice. And it's like volunteering is my way of gaining a lot of experience because a lot of the experiences I had, you could not get any other way. But I think, volunteering is something that I truly believe in, and I think more people should do.
I could. Did you do Girl Guides? Did you sell cookies?
No, I did not. I was not part of that, actually.
Okay. I mean, I think that's, even though it's kind of not, it's government sponsored, I actually think the Girl Guides and the Boy Scouts was a really good initiative. So, I mean, could we ask you a couple questions about like the controversial topics of libertarianism, just to kind of see where you're at?
Sure.
Borders. Where are you on borders?
So I'm for secure borders.
Okay.
More of an Ellis Island approach. In terms of the nitty gritty, I was actually just discussing this the other day with someone, because they're like, well, people could just, walk across the border. Yeah, Ellis Island, coming from the water. But like, what about the people walking across the border? I mean, yeah, I get that. But I don't know if a wall is really going to solve that problem. I mean, we already have, fencing. So just
it's
keep
not
that.
great fencing though, but yeah.
I know. I would say, obviously, we need to reduce the social welfare program so that there's no incentives for these people to come over. Because if they come here and they don't get anything, then they're like, oh, maybe I should go back. I'm not getting anything here. So I think that would deter a lot of people from crossing over the fence.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a big one, because you have your bordertarians, as they're called, and then you have your anarchists that just believe, the only borders are like private property. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously government property exists, especially around our borders, because we have to protect our country, obviously. I believe in, defense. So, yeah, I mean, I think we should have points where people enter. People should be vetted. They should, have like a physical medical test, to make sure they're not bringing in diseases. But I don't know, in terms of the nitty gritty stuff, what do we do with the illegal immigrants that are already here? The babies that are born in America, do we send them back? That's tough. I know it would be very, very, very expensive if we truly deal with all of these illegal immigrants that are here and we, start deporting them. And the border wall is super expensive too. And that project would take years and years and years to complete. And by the time we're actually in that process, we'll have another new president, and they'll probably want something else.
Right. What do you think of Gary Johnson's approach to illegal immigrants? If you remember, do you remember what his whole approach to it was?
I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember. I don't think it was a huge issue back when he was running. It probably wasn't like super big yet.
Well, I know the big thing with him was he was first interviewed about so what do you think about what Trump said? When Trump initially said, they're bringing drugs and this and that. He said that whole thing. And he says, well, I think it's incendiary. That's all he said is, oh, it's not the best thing to say, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And then he later on says, well, we should take all the immigrants that we have now and give them work visas so that they're at least, I mean, a lot of libertarians didn't like Gary Johnson, and I see that a lot, but I kind of see Gary Johnson as part of the gradual shift. He was just the step to take. He wasn't he wasn't like an anarchist. He wasn't a minarchist. He's still a libertarian, I think, but he just took the small step that was necessary. He takes a small step. We elect another president somewhere down the line that takes another small step. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have someone like, I don't know if you know Adam Kokesh.
Yes, I do.
We're not going to have Adam Kokesh be president in our lifetime, because that's just way too radical of a step. He's
more of an anarchist, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, as president, he wanted to pretty much break down to municipalities. Like borders as we know it wouldn't exist. It would just be municipalities having their own borders. And it was like, maybe in a few hundred years, if we're doing everything right. But yeah, Johnson wanted to give illegal immigrants work visas so that they could start to contribute to the system. And really, so they're not completely living just tax-free. Because that's a big thing is their employers can pay them the same wages we get paid, but no taxes. And, yes, taxation is theft, but we need to slowly work this out. If they're here, we might as well have them pay taxes until we get the tax, then we get that figured out. Then we'll figure out cutting taxes.
Right, because like some people say, well, we need to close the borders until we get rid of the social welfare state. So they're like, we have to do this first and then that. But it's like, these people are going to keep coming in, so we just got to gradually just start making these changes little by little. There's so many things that we got to fix all at once.
Yeah. I think there was this video I saw from PragerU that basically said, build the wall, but also legalize all the immigrants that are here, or at least put them on a path.
Mm-hmm. Which I agree with. I don't know. I would have to see the cost breakdown. What's cheaper? Is it cheaper to just start getting them on the path to citizenship, giving them visas? Is it cheaper to deport them all, investigate all of them? That sounds like it would be more expensive to me.
It would be, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Reagan did this, though. He did this back in the 80s, where it was the same debate back then. He basically gave an amnesty. So he said, okay, everybody who's here, we're going to give you, permanent residency. And what a lot of people don't know is that every 10 years, an amnesty kind of goes out, underneath the covers. So people who've been residing there illegally at a certain time, they just get a green card, right?
Right.
But Reagan's argument is we got to secure the border. It's like, all right, we've screwed up in the past. We can't do anything about that. But of course, Congress didn't fund the wall back then, or any kind of prevention back then. So you're caught in this endless loop that, you're rewarding people coming into the country illegally. They live it out for however 5 to 10 years. The immigrants know that there's a time period. They just got to last it out. So all of those incentives are there, and, the government is not in control of it. And the legal path, like for myself, for instance, my sister is an American citizen.
Oh.
Right. So I can get my citizenship through her. But it's going to take me about 15 years because the queue of legal immigrants is, it would circle the earth and back to the moon and come back. It's insane. So there's actually a time preference to do it illegally.
Yeah.
Because you would actually get a lot of things faster than actually trying to do it legally. So we need to improve.
We need to improve the vetting process. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're one of the few countries that still does birthright citizenship. Which is interesting. So a lot of, like, the Russians we hear the stories all the time. They get pregnant, they fly to the US 8 months pregnant, they have the child in the US that becomes an American citizen, and then the mother and the father apply through the child, and then it's reverse engineered and stuff. So yeah.
I mean, that's another topic, separating these families. It's like, do you deport the parents and keep the child in foster care, and all these families that are at the border, just being held there? I mean, it is such a mess, and I don't know a good answer. I don't want to split up the families. I mean, I know what foster care does to a child, and it's not pretty. It messes them up.
But sometimes it's necessary because it's not their child. You gotta, trafficking of children and stuff that. So a lot of them have to, that's why the policy is there to separate the kids, because they need to verify, hey, okay, this is actually your mom and dad. So I mean, I mean, speaking of my sister again, she did not change her last name when she got married. So she retained her, because she's a PhD doctor. All her certificates are in her name. So she's a Potter, right? So I'm a Potter, she's a Potter. But my niece, her daughter, carries the married name. So every time the two of them are traveling, they pull them apart and ask them, is this your mother? Where's your father? Because of child trafficking, and it's a reality,
Oh, absolutely. Thinking back, my great grandmother actually came over on the boat through Ellis Island from Russia.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. So I guess I have, in my own family history, I have immigration.
Fantastic. Have you ever done like the DNA test and stuff and kind of dug into it a bit?
I will not do that. I will not put my DNA out there. I am too afraid.
Yeah, because
like they don't have it already.
And that's the thing is like we not only we're not giving our DNA to the government, which they probably already have anyways, but we're not giving it to certain corporations either. Because what are they? They're selling it to
Ancestry.
Government.
Yeah.
23andMe. Yeah. As much as I'd like to know, no. I'm reading 1984 right now. I just started it, and no.
George Orwell was brilliant. He was ahead of his time.
What do you think of it so far? I personally haven't read it. I've watched part of the movie, but that obviously doesn't do it justice.
Well, I just got to page 4, so I just started reading this morning. Oh, actually, I'm on page 6. Just kidding. But I already started highlighting all of the parts that are similar to our government. So you see reference to the NSA. You see Big Brother is watching you.
Have you started writing out, down with Big Brother? Have you got to that part yet?
No.
Okay. I wouldn't spoil it for you.
Haven't gotten there yet. But it's like they have helicopters flying next to their windows. Those are like drones. Like I am just finding so many similarities here, and I'm like, oh dear, this is very scary. But it's really good so far.
It's a good story. In fact, out here in the UK, it's probably a Bible for our politicians.
Yeah.
Because they're masters of double speak, which is, you'll get into it. His friend, the guy's friend, he works for the Ministry of Language and he destroys words, and he goes into this great thing about destroying language. We are literally living that in the UK because the BBC is state-funded television, right? And literally everything they say, the opposite tends to be true. And it's such a mindset. So for instance, obviously we had the Brexit vote out here in the UK, and that to this day remains the major populace decision. So even when polled and stuff like that, that is what the people want. But the politicians come out and they don't want to leave it because, of course, it's a gravy train for them. They're getting money from the European Union and other things. So a bunch of politicians broke away from their political parties and created something called Change UK, implying like, oh, we're going to change the country. But every one of their policies is status quo, right? They don't actually want to change anything. They want everything to stay the same, including the fact that we stay in the European Union. But that type of manipulation, that double speak of the use of language and all this other kinds of stuff, it's policy out here. If we have, some kind of, let's say, political activism from certain groups and religious sects in this country, the directive is not to name the religion or the race of the person because it might cause unrest. So basically everybody in the Middle East is now Asian.
Nope.
Right? Everybody in the Middle East is now Asian. And this is the double speak that we're seeing. I mean, that is like literally, they will not say that, this is what's really going on. There's a whole coded language that's coming out of the press out here. It's ridiculous. We're living 1984.
And speaking of language, so while the UK is starting to get into that, China. So I'm half Chinese, but I grew up in Taiwan. And growing up, it was pretty much, I always joke my mom is kind of like a light version of Alex Jones about China. Because not that she's like, going too crazy, but just everything about my life growing up there, she would just say, why this happens, why that happens. Like, for example, do you remember the 2008 Beijing Olympics at all? Like a little bit of it?
I remember that it was happening. I don't know too much else.
If you go back and you watch any like let's say like the swimming events and stuff, and you look at the place they're in, you'll see like in the stands, there's not a lot of people watching these events.
Okay.
And my mom's like, why that is, right? I'm like, why? And she goes, because 2/3 of the tickets were bought up by the government because they want to prevent any large gatherings.
Is that something? Wow.
And I look at them like that actually makes a lot of sense.
That could be true.
Wow. Why didn't they want a lot of people there? I don't know.
Tiananmen Square. You don't want
they didn't want people to uprise.
Especially on international TV.
Oh my gosh. It's like, who thinks of these things, I
Come
thought
to the
maybe
party, apparently.
I thought maybe they didn't want a large crowd because of terrorist attacks or something. You know, in this
Well,
day and
I mean,
age,
there
they
is
all
that too, and you have the. I don't know if you've heard about the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs, which are
no.
they're an ethnic group in like deep in China.
Uh-huh.
They're basically they're from countries that tend to be very Muslim leaning. So they're basically Muslims in
Yeah.
China. They're all sent off to a concentration camp now.
I have
Because-
heard about that. Yes, a friend of mine actually brought that up about Muslim
Yeah.
people that are in concentration camps.
in China
Yes.
because
Yes.
to prevent, and it's because it's public safety, they're saying, because it's to prevent extremism.
Mm.
And most of these people are basically, I mean, they're basically, they look very Asian, but they
Mhm.
all wear, you know, the hijab and everything, and they're just sent off. And some of them, you know, families are split up because a certain member of the family who's even remotely suspected of possibly tied to some group, they disappear.
Mhm.
And then a year later, they come back, and it's just all these horror stories of being in a concentration camp.
Wow.
But the big thing on language is Chinese has been manipulated. So there's actually two types of Chinese. There's the Chinese that I grew up speaking, but I mean, it's not so much speak. I mean, speaking is the same. It's the
Mhm.
writing. So Chinese is very much like we call them pictograms. They're based off pictures. If you look at the
Yeah.
history of certain words, they look like the thing they're depicting. It's evolved over time. A lot of words, for example, so the word we use for medicine used to basically be a composition of two different words. It was basically grass or herb and the word happy. Those put together, basically herbs made you happier.
Aw, that's so true.
Yeah, we'll get to the drug question in a minute.
But it was, you know, because Chinese medicine used to be very much herbal based and such. So medicine meant, you know, a herb or a grass or some sort of plant that made you happy. Well, now they changed that where it looks the same, but they simplified it. Hence the word simplified Chinese, if you ever look that up. They simplified it where you take basically fewer strokes with your pen to write the word, completely devoid of the meaning anymore.
Wow.
So imagine if, you know, like the letter A, if somehow we wrote it simpler, if we wrote
Right.
like words, or if we removed letters from the alphabet or words to make them shorter, just because
Right.
it's easier. But now it's devoid of certain meanings.
Yes.
We're not as expressive in how we talk, or we're saying the same words, but the way we read the words, like Chinese is very tied to how it's written. Now that you
Mhm.
write it differently, it doesn't have the meaning anymore.
Isn't that interesting? I wonder if that's kind of what our culture is doing with all these acronyms that we use.
It's
Well, that's more-
exactly that.
Like LOL or TTYL, whatever.
I mean, that kind of came about because of the internet, though, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
the government threw that out there.
But now the
Yeah, but-
government might be like, let's keep this going. This is going somewhere good.
Because now we can change the meaning of the words, right? So, I mean, if you've had any dealing, especially on Twitter, you must have dealt with some SJW, you know, crazies with
Yeah.
their brain syphilis, and they changed the meaning of the words. So, you know, prejudice, or is that it? Yeah, it's you know, to be prejudiced, it has to be power plus privilege or something like that.
Racism.
Right. Racism is you know, yes, it's ethnic minority, but it has to have the power element. That's never been a part of the definition of the word, but that is actually what Orwell was talking about, the destruction of the meaning of words.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've encountered some of those crazies online.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, I stay away from them. What I learned during the Austin Peterson campaign was to just ignore negativity and just push positivity. So I honestly would just not respond.
Oh no, Amos, we're screwed.
Just remember, we're all
But it
Nazis
works.
too.
Yeah, I mean, it truly works because
Does it?
bullies want you to get upset at them. That's their goal. They want to make you mad. So if you
Yes.
show, hey, I'm not mad, I don't care, I'm actually happy, and you just made my day great, then they'll stop.
Exactly.
So drugs.
Yeah, we're gonna touch on the drugs thing. Here we go.
I mean, the first one, obviously, everyone's talking
Is
about
how much do you smoke?
Oh, no.
I actually don't. I mean, admittedly, I am probably the most like clean person you will ever meet. I do not drink. I do not smoke. None.
Have you ever, though?
Have I ever? I've tried, yes, but I've never been drunk ever in my life. Admittedly, never.
You poor thing.
And for me, that is just my own personal preference. I just prefer to be that way. I'm not pushing it on anybody else.
With so you said you have tried smoking?
No.
No. Oh, you tried drink. You just had it like you've
right. Just tried drinking like sips of things. Yes. Yeah. So like I said, I'm a very different person. I'm like a dork to the extreme.
and you know, it's funny because we actually know some other people who are also libertarians, but they've just, you know, as much as they would stand for like legalizing marijuana or just decriminalization of just drugs in general, they personally haven't partaken in anything. Now, what is the legalization status in Michigan for marijuana?
Yeah, we just became recreational with this past election. So we were medical. Yeah, and so I'm very happy about that, very supportive. But I think it's going to take some time until you can actually just like go to a store and buy marijuana whenever you want. I think it'll be like 2020. It's a whole transition period.
And what is your attitude towards legalization of drugs?
I think that they should be decriminalized. You know, you shouldn't go to jail for using drugs. I've always heard that legalization is how the government is able to get money from people. So like if you legalize something, then you can get tax money from it. So that's kind of one argument I've heard from libertarians before.
Might as well earn tax dollars off of selling any
Right. Because on the marijuana, now the government's charging taxes, so they're making money from it. You know, so both parties win, I guess. You know, the people win and the government wins. But
unless for Canada.
Except for Canada.
Did you hear what happened with Canada?
No.
They actually started losing money selling weed to the public.
Oh, and the government did.
Yes.
They had their own like state-run dispensaries, and a lot of libertarians I follow were posting like, leave it up to the government to actually lose money selling drugs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would be fine if like marijuana was sold like cereal at a store, you know, pick it up off the shelf, go buy it. I mean, in terms of ages, you know, like age limits, do those actually work? Probably not. I mean, how many kids would drink with their family when they were young? Right.
I mean, well, that actually used to be. I mean, some families will have their child will have like a glass of wine.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing. Even for like Jewish holidays, you know, like we used to have wine at our table.
But there have been studies that show that marijuana consumption, I think before the age of 25, at least in large amounts or frequent amounts, can inhibit certain brain functions.
Yes, and I'm sure drinking alcohol obviously is not. None of these things are good for you. But also, sugary Cocoa Puffs are not good for you as cereal. You know, I mean, sugar.
4-year-olds.
Yeah, it's like Mountain Dew is not good for you or your teeth. So it's like, I guess where do we draw the line? I'm not sure on that. But there's a lot of things on our store shelves that are very harmful to us, and we're able to get them very easily.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So you would say you would decriminalize all drugs. Are there any drugs that you would like legalize recreationally? You know, so the marijuana thing. Okay, is there anything else that you're kind of say people should be able to use?
Everything. I mean, I think everything should be treated like marijuana.
That's awesome. I mean, that's my personal philosophy. A lot of people have issue with it, but you know, addiction. There's this fantastic psychologist, this Gabor, I can't remember his last name, and he talks about that the addictive personality. If you talk to addicts, it's not the substance itself; it's a hurt or a pain or something in their life, a trauma, and the drugs help them to be normal.
Yeah.
Right. So. I mean, I think this is kind of our shared philosophy that drug use is a medical issue, not a criminal issue.
Oh yeah, it's a disease. Absolutely. Addiction is a disease. Yeah.
Addiction is a disease. And a couple of the states are now doing psilocybin. Magic mushrooms have been legalized in
Cities.
Colorado.
Denver.
Yeah, in Denver.
Cities, maybe there's one more.
I think there's another one. Yeah.
But I mean, it's only on a city thing, and I actually know of one of the people that was involved in kind of getting the ball rolling on that. Maybe we'll have to have him on, but he part of the Denver one, and yeah, the psilocybin.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the magic mushrooms, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of our problem of addiction, using drugs, there's such a stigma in our society. Like, if you're a drug user, you're a bad person, So people are scared to get help. They're scared to admit that they use drugs. So maybe if we can just make there be less of a stigma, and more of, let's get this person some help, let's not judge them, then there will be less addicts because they'll have that help that they need.
Oh, I mean, definitely in the West with the war on drugs in the 70s and the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was something ridiculous. I don't know if you were around when those ads came out in the 80s.
No, I was late 80s. I was born in 88.
Late 80s. Right, there you go. So, you smoke weed and your bones are going to dissolve, and, you take one puff of a joint and, suddenly you're living on the streets. I mean, just absolute hysteria.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the same thing was surrounded around LSD. People stare at the sun until they go blind, total bullshit. And
so obviously LSD, I know it can hurt you very badly, but I know people can have pretty bad trips. I know that.
You can have
sure.
a bad trip. Yeah, I agree with that.
Having a bad trip is just more so the mental aspect. Like,
yeah,
when people voice it, before doing any of this, it's good to like go for a hike, go listen to some music, read a book, do something to kind of calm your mind, then partake. But then if you're like going into it like freaking out,
or charged up on other stuff,
I think some people become dehydrated. I believe, if that's ecstasy. If they don't drink enough water and they're at a rave. I mean, as with anything, you got to just watch what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, in a previous conversation, they're actually using LSD, psilocybin, DMT to treat non-responsive depression and PTSD. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of the research going on in the Veterans Affairs and stuff like that. And psychedelic therapy, microdosing is that's a subculture. People take little bits of mushrooms or LSD, not enough to get a trip, but it helps with their creativity and the guy who put me onto it, he's a trader. So I'm a trader by profession. So I buy and sell US equities and currencies, and it's all charts and patterns. And I got a guy out here in the city of London. He's a trader, and he swears magic mushrooms make him a better trader.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, the magic mushrooms help him see the patterns in the market, right? Mm-hmm. This is his expert. I don't know if it's true or not.
I think it helps people see the world in a very different light. From people I've heard, they've never seen the world the same way ever again after using some of these substances.
Yeah. I mean, what was sad about it is after the 70s and the war on drugs, a whole line of research died, right? So Nixon put it into law, the war on drugs. And we've lost basically 30 to 40 years of research, what these substances can do, what are the benefits, the risks, and these other things. We're going through a renaissance of that right now, which I'm very encouraged to see what Denver has done. There is a psychedelic society out here in the UK that's pushing for the same kind of thing. But I think it's very encouraging because there's so many medical things we don't know, especially about the brain. And we have to deal with autism and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all these brain diseases, and we got nothing, right? We don't have any solutions. So I think everything should be on the table to explore, And
I think, let's go back to parenting. Parents should be the judges of their own children, and again, talking about legislation, it's like, giving heroin to 5-year-olds. I know Austin Peterson had something about that many years ago where he said we should not give, heroin to 5-year-olds. And people were all like,
blasphemy.
But it's like, if a parent did that, should they get in trouble? Because that could really hurt a child if you did give them some of those drugs. Some more than others, obviously.
I mean, the opioids being prescribed for young kids with pain is also as destructive, and that's fine.
And look look at Ritalin, for ADHD. Yeah. I mean, it's come out that has negative side effects over the years.
Now, it's good that you brought up that point on parenting. What are some of your thoughts on, I guess, what is going on in the school system when it comes to things like, not to get into the nitty-gritty details, but aspects of like how, so a lot of the LGBT types of messages that are getting into schools, and how that's changing not only the discussion regarding different types of sexuality, but also even like how sex ed is approached. Because I've heard a lot of different opinions on like, should schools teach sex ed? Should we leave it up to the parents? What if the parents are inadequate? Do you make something very standard? Do you just never touch it? Or and of course, then you have some libertarians that just don't believe public education should exist at all.
Right. Which is, I'm all for private education, homeschooling. I want to try to get rid of public education for sure. I'm just thinking back to when I had sex ed, 4th and 5th grade. I remember I actually was off the day.
5th grade.
Yeah. I actually was off on the day that they showed the birthing video. So thank God I was off on that day. But honestly, I don't think sex ed helped me one bit. The things that they talked about, I don't even remember them really. So I think ultimately, it should come from, the parents. It's their job to educate. It's their job to teach, the girls about different methods to protect themselves, to teach the guys. Maybe parents can, provide condoms or help their, child get access to birth control. Because a lot of kids have unprotected sex because they're scared to talk to someone about it. And they are uneducated on it. So clearly, I guess they're not learning enough in school because look at all of these teen pregnancies that are happening.
Right. Now, what about when it comes to some of the LGBT stuff? I mean, there's some schools that are, I guess, doing, I had the discussion, and I'll just say what I kind of thought about it with, for example, like just LGBT in general. Like, how do you approach talking about that in a school? I always kind of said, well, I mean, you don't want to like hide things away from kids because kids will find out some other way. It probably wasn't the best situation. Kind of, let them know like, hey, there's man and woman, and this is how like, nature kind of did it this way, but there's also all these other ways, but never in any position to like say, this is like, because there are statistics, like a majority of people are not under the LGBT sort of spectrum, if you'll say. But then again, this also comes back to why should the schools be allowed to even talk about any of this stuff? But then you have states like in the South where maybe like kids will never learn about any like just being, the existence of, gay, homosexual, bisexual individuals out there. It's like, do you have any thoughts on that? Like how to go about that? Because then there's even like, because now you have a lot of this going on with like kids who are before they even hitting puberty already transitioning or something,
Right. I'm again remembering back to when I was younger. I don't really know if they talked about being gay in school. I do remember there were some kids that I went to school with, and I was wondering in the back of my head, I was like, oh, I think, they might turn out to be gay. I just remember that probably because at home, my family would talk about people who were gay. And so I would just, think in my head. But I think there definitely should be education about it just in order to promote kindness within a school, so there's less bullying. As with any difference, teach children about disabilities. I remember at a very young age, I think in like preschool or kindergarten, I got to go into a special needs classroom and, work with kids that had Down syndrome and just expose yourself to people of all kinds. So I think, we should just educate each other on differences and embrace those differences. In terms of transitioning, yeah, that's very tough.
Because there are schools and there are areas where that is not necessarily like shoved in kids' faces, but it's kind of like treated as if like, in reality, there, and again, when I say words like the norm or something, people get all up in arms, but statistically speaking, most people are under a certain group. I mean, we're all straight. I mean, no, I'm saying, trying not to be. Help me out here, Brooke. You know what I'm getting at.
Are you saying most people are heterosexual?
Yeah, most people are heterosexual in the world.
Yeah,
and it's only like less than I think 5% that, and that's probably a larger number than more liberal number, but that would identify under LGBT.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you have these schools that are kind of promoting it as if like LGBT is the mainstream.
Right. Now I feel like it's almost becoming a fad in a way. Like,
well,
I think
yeah, you look
exactly.
You look at the numbers, and like the LGBT like people who identify under that have actually grown in number, which has never been the case in history. It's just like, people are identifying that as a thing.
It's hip and it's cool and it's fashionable.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe there were a lot of people back in the day who wanted to try something, but they were scared. Again, that stigma associated, with being in the LGBTQ community. It's like embarrassing if you admit that you are.
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with social media as well. Because we've raised the generation now that has been born with the internet. I actually am old enough to remember the time before. And there's such a desire for the likes, the attentions, the comments, and all these other types of things. There's almost a pressure to stand out. I mean, Instagram is nothing but booty models now. Everybody's got their ass and their tits out, and 14-year-old girls with a million followers, right?
That's how you get followers. Even in the Liberty community, I see a lot of these girls revealing photos of themselves, and they have nothing to do. Well, they do have to do with Liberty because they're, being free to show their body, but that's how they're getting these followers.
Oh yeah. We've had some interesting discussions with some ladies. Amos could definitely fill you in on that.
I've tried to like make a small point here and there to kind of point it out. It's like I like being a libertarian. Like, yes, we're capitalists. We believe in the free market. So yes, you have every right to do whatever you want to do to gain followers and gain attention on social media.
Absolutely.
But at least admit that you're doing that. When being pointed out about it, don't just go like, no, I'm not trying to use sex appeal. And then it's like, I'm like scrolling back on their Twitter, and it's like, what about this picture? What about that? I'm not saying you can't, but at least don't be dishonest,
Right. And I'm sure if I did that too, I'm sure I would get tons of followers. But you know what? I rather spread my knowledge and try to get popular that way than anything else.
Just out of curiosity, how many Twitter followers do you have?
Oh, I just passed the 8,000 mark just the other day.
Right. That's about 7,500 more than both of us.
I mean, you do understand, and this is nothing against you, but it's being a woman tends to gain you more followers, at least as a libertarian. First off, there aren't many women in the libertarian movement.
Yes, you are a unicorn in that respect.
Right. Let alone, I mean, again, a woman who actually gives off very positive sort of vibe to a lot of people. My experience with a lot of libertarian women is there tends to be, I guess, not as warm. Is the word.
They come across as like sort of attitude-y, like they have a chip on their shoulder and like don't approach them. I don't know why. It's like a badass vibe that you get.
It's the guns. It's the
guns. I'll say this. There were a group of guys I was talking to who were libertarians that were like, why is it? It's like every 9 of these types of women, there's like one, and they actually mentioned you. Aww. One of you, like one, like, why can't it just be like half and half? Or like, it's just.
Well, kind of I think it goes back to a lot of people are very insecure with themselves. And so they tend to, share pictures or, sexuality or whatever. And it's just because they're insecure. So if you're truly confident, you might not need to act that way so much. If you're truly confident, you don't need to act badass. You can just be yourself, be weird, be goofy. Right, so to get to that point where you truly don't care what people think, that is very difficult. I have had to read a lot of self-help books over the course of the years, and that's what got me here. Lots of positive affirmations. I mean, all that self-talk. That's what's made me feel better about myself.
Right. Now, for our listeners, actually, I'm curious, what types of books would you recommend? Are there any really good ones that made an impact to you? Or
Well, I'm looking at my bookshelf. There's Tiny Buddha books. I kind of like to dive into Buddhism a little bit.
I was a Buddhist, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That's a long story. We'll save that for the next one.
But in terms of self-help books, I mean, just books about positivity, mindfulness, meditation, all of that has helped me. Even just reading quotes online, just saying, you can do it, be yourself, don't worry. Like just those things, getting those in your mind every single day, it'll just help you a lot. But in terms of political books, that's what I'm reading now. I'm reading more government history books. So I started off with Human Action. That took me many months to read. It was
I think I saw your review.
Pages. Yeah, that was like my very first review I ever did. And then everything just kind of happened organically. I just kept sharing more and more of what I was learning in these books. And then that led to my YouTube channel, because I can't post a video over a certain length on Twitter. So in order to share everything I wanted to, I had to find a platform, to share a longer video. So that was YouTube. But I've read Liberty Defined, The Road to Serfdom, Back on the Road to Serfdom. So I'm trying to get through all of the classics first, just so that I can truly walk the walk and talk the talk and be like, I know what I'm talking about now.
That's a lot better than most people. Most libertarians have the book and never read it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually get a lot of the books off of my boyfriend's shelf, because he bought a lot of these books and he never read most of them. So
there you go.
So they're just completely unread, and I'm like, I'll take these.
Fantastic.
Well, we are actually coming up on our time right here, but I think I got everything for all your social media. I've got your YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and your Facebook page. Was there anything else, any other social media platform that you are?
If anyone wants to follow my book reading, you can go to goodreads.com/Steffi_Cole, and you can see all the books that I've read, my reviews on them.
Okay. Now, you said there was I remember on your channel, a Sundays with Steffi. Where is that?
Yeah, so that actually takes my YouTube videos and puts them on the Libertarian Republic, which is Austin Peterson's news website.
Okay.
So it's just a special feature. Every Sunday, I come out with a new video. So you can either see it on my actual YouTube page, or you can go to the Libertarian Republic and you can see it there too.
Okay. And what types of videos are those about? I know you were like baking cookies the other day. Was it?
Yeah, a very special Liberty hero of mine. I used his cookie recipe. So that'll be fun to share. But yeah, I'm kind of exploring this YouTube world. So I've done a singing video where I sang the Star Spangled Banner. I've done shooting videos, book review videos, movie reviews. And next week, I'm actually going to the Mises Library at Hillsdale College. So I'm going to do a little video there.
Excellent.
Just of my experience. So I just try to think of different liberty topics and things that I can do just to make it fun and lighthearted. Because I find that there's so many informational things online, but there's very little that makes liberty fun.
Right. Now, have you noticed anything with YouTube, like with your views, or over time, have they changed? Not like your views, I'm saying views on the video itself. I don't know if have you kept up at all with what's going on with the mass censorship on YouTube and all that?
Yeah, I know about all the demonetization. I'm not monetized myself yet. I still have to get to 1,000 subscribers, and I think it's 400 hours.
4,000.
4,000. Oh God, I have a long way to go. Shoot. Yeah, so I will not get paid by any means for a long, long, long time.
And just lastly, like, where are you going to be? What is the goal for the future? Where are you going with the whole platform and the liberty message?
I don't really know. I'm letting it develop naturally. I truly feel things just kind of fall into place and lead you where you need to be. But I definitely want to just continue to be a liberty cheerleader, obviously with the next election season, I want to support those good candidates. Justin Amash is one of them that I really want to support big time this year. So I will push out, any candidates that anybody likes. So share them with me and I will vet them and I will talk about them. And so, yeah, I don't think I want to run for office. Not yet,
you beat me to it.
People always ask me that, and I'm like, I'm having too much fun just doing this stuff. Once you run for office, you can't have all this time for creativity anymore.
It's like there's nothing wrong. Like that's how I felt too. Is at one point I thought with just becoming more involved with Liberty, I thought, oh, maybe I'll run for something. And I thought, you know what? We'll do our podcast. I'll write for whoever I'm writing for. Brooke and I will do our own thing. Just spreading the message itself seems to be enough fun as it is. Mm-hmm. And if you get to speak at certain like political candidates or even elected officials, whatever event they're doing, mm-hmm. that's great too. But that would like be the most of it. It wouldn't I don't feel I really need to like get into any office. I'd love to work with people in office, but
yeah.
That's about it. So.
Absolutely. And I think, there's a stigma. Libertarians are very lazy people, or they just like to, tweet behind a screen and not really do much. We need to be motivated. So that's kind of what I'm doing, is I'm trying to like push people out there and be like, do it, put some work into this, guys. We can make liberty happen.
Right.
We definitely need more of that in the UK because it's very dark out here.
Yeah.
And you guys actually have a Libertarian Party there.
Yeah, I'm a part of the Libertarian Party out here.
Yeah,
it's going to be probably 30 years before we get elected, unless we change the voting system. But we'll save the UK side of it for another time.
But we're actually coming up on our time here. Anything else you wanted to add, Brooke?
No, Steffi, this has been an absolute pleasure. Your energy, your passion for what you're doing it's very infectious.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you've been a fantastic guest. I hope you had as good a time as we've had here today.
Yeah, I did. I felt very comfortable. I felt like I was just talking to my friends. So it was very nice.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Now, for all the listeners and the viewers on the podcast, do check out Steffi's other social media links. So check her out, Steffi Cole on YouTube, Steffi_Cole on Twitter, and then the same on Instagram as well. And then Facebook.com/Real Steffi Cole. And then, of course, I'll be adding that Goodreads one too, as well as pointing to Libertarian Republic where they have your videos there. Anything you're working, I know you said you were doing a video, anything you're working on, anything big happening this year that you're trying to do, or probably not? I don't know.
I have yet to find out. I'm excited to go to YaleCon. They're coming to Detroit in September. So okay. I'm definitely excited for that. I hope I meet some cool people. I rarely go to big Liberty events, so when one comes to town, I get really excited.
Okay,
that's awesome.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Do like and comment on the video. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to our podcast. Of course, we're on Google Play and iTunes, and I think a couple other ones. But and then of course follow Brooke and myself on social media. Brook_Potter, that's him on Twitter, and then me is at Amos Joe. All of our links are below. Definitely check those out. And yeah, anything you wanted to add quick, Brooke?
No, this is a great show. We definitely put this one in the bank, and we're looking forward to next week.
Awesome. Well, yes, and of course, next week, did we get that guest, Brooke? That we're
working on it.
We're working on it. Okay. So we'll be announcing that later in the week. But thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you once again to Steffi for joining us today.
Thank you.
We will see everyone next week then.
Thanks for watching, guys.